Homelander had never tasted fear, until two shadows fell from a sky that screamed. One landed like a god, cape red as arterial blood, eyes holding suns that could melt continents. The other touched down silent as cancer, darkness wrapped in Kevlar, already counting exits and weaknesses. Vaught's golden boy smiled for the cameras. Superman didn't smile back. In this universe, heroes snort cocaine off interns. Capes hide body counts. Corporations own the souls behind the spandex. Every savior has a price tag. Every rescue has a PR team. But these two strangers? No contracts, no handlers, no fear. Batman watched Homelander's pupils dilate, recognized the panic of a predator meeting something higher on the food chain. Superman heard Vought executives' heartbeats spike 3 buildings away. This world had forgotten what real heroes looked like. It was about to remember. Painfully. The passenger jet dropped like a coffin with wings. 40,000 feet above the Atlantic, both engines had failed simultaneously, not mechanical failure, but sabotage. Someone had paid good money to ensure Flight 1107 never reached Dublin. The insurance payout alone would cover Vought's quarterly losses in the European market. Inside the cabin, 247 passengers screamed prayers to gods who weren't listening. The flight attendants had stopped pretending calm existed. Children clutched parents who clutched armrests, waiting for impact that physics guaranteed within 90 seconds. Vaught's cameras were already rolling. Queen Maeve stood on the rescue helicopter, hair professionally windswept, costume adjusted for optimal broadcast angles. Beside her, A-Train vibrated with chemical impatience, Compound V singing through veins that should have collapsed years ago. 30 seconds to visual contact. The director's voice crackled through comms. Remember, struggle first, then success. We need the drama. Maeve's jaw tightened. She remembered when saving people meant something. That memory was older than most of her fans. The plane entered visual range and stopped. Not slowed, not redirected. The aircraft hung suspended in atmosphere like someone had pressed pause on gravity itself. Maeve's breath caught. A-Train's vibrations stuttered into stillness. A red and blue blur moved beneath the fuselage, not supporting it from below, but cradling it, guiding it backward with precision that violated every law of physics. Vought scientists understood. The plane began descending, gently, impossibly, toward a runway that materialized in Ireland faster than the navigation systems could recalculate. Wheels touched tarmac without a single scream. The rescue helicopter hovered uselessly, cameras capturing footage that would require 17 hours of executive meetings to process. Superman set the aircraft down and listened. 247 heartbeats, 247 breaths, 0 casualties. He checked the structural integrity of the fuselage, confirmed no injuries requiring immediate attention, and lifted off before the first passenger reached an exit door. No statements, no poses, no branding opportunities, just gone. Vought Tower's 63rd floor erupted into chaos that made quarterly earnings calls look peaceful. Screens replayed the footage from every angle. Amateur cell phones, news helicopters, satellite imagery that shouldn't have been accessible to media outlets. The unknown figure moved with speed that made A-Train look arthritic and strength that made Homelander look adequate. Stan Edgar watched in silence while subordinates screamed into phones. This wasn't competition. Competition could be bought, blackmailed, or buried. This was disruption. In the penthouse above, Homelander stood motionless before a window that reflected a smile frozen too long to be genuine. He had watched the footage 47 times. He had counted. No wires, no visible exertion, no theatrical grunts or carefully rehearsed struggle. The stranger had caught a falling plane like a parent catching a child's balloon, effortless, natural, almost bored. The stranger had done what Homelander pretended to do, actually saved people. Find him. Homelander's voice carried the softness that preceded his worst decisions. Now, 3,000 miles away, in a city that smelled like industrial failure and broken promises, Bruce Wayne had already been working for 6 hours. He had arrived without announcement, purchased a condemned warehouse through 17 shell companies, and established surveillance networks that would have made the NSA weep with envy. His methods were older than Compound V, but considerably more reliable pattern recognition, financial forensics, psychological profiling. Gotham didn't exist in this universe, but its lessons translated perfectly. Corruption always wore the same face, only the logos changed. Batman's first week yielded more intelligence than most agencies gathered in years. Vought security was sophisticated but arrogant. They trusted contracts more than countermeasures, lawyers more than locks. They believed money solved problems that required silence. They had never encountered someone who didn't want money. The Compound V files confirmed suspicions that had crystallized during his first hour of research. Enhanced individuals weren't born, they were manufactured. Babies injected with experimental substances, survivors marketed as miracles, failures buried beneath enough paperwork to fill graveyards. Heroes were products, justice was a brand, and everyone had a price tag, including the victims. Batman cataloged everything's strength thresholds, psychological vulnerabilities, supply chains, cover-ups. He mapped relationships between Vought executives and government officials, traced money flows to offshore accounts, identified 17 assassinations disguised as accidents in the past year alone. These gods were flawed. Flawed meant killable. Superman heard the fear before he understood its source. Flying above cities he didn't recognize, he listened to heartbeats and found something wrong with all of them. Not the sudden spike of disaster or the racing pulse of crime, but a constant, low-frequency dread that permeated everything. People walked faster when heroes appeared. Children flinched at capes. Rescue victims begged to remain anonymous, terrified of retaliation for making their saviors look slow. This world's protectors weren't trusted. They were feared. He stopped a convenience store robbery on his third day. The perpetrator was a desperate father with an empty gun and emptier options. Superman disarmed him gently, left money for the register damage, and prepared to contact authorities. The store owner grabbed his arm with trembling fingers. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't tell anyone you were here. If Vought finds out their territory got covered by someone else." She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Superman understood. This world didn't need another hero. It needed someone to tear down the ones destroying it. Superman went public on a Tuesday. No press releases, no costume reveals, no carefully orchestrated media campaigns. He simply landed in Central Park during peak hours, stood where cameras could see him clearly, and spoke. "My name is Superman. I'm not from this world, but I intend to help it. I won't sign contracts with corporations. I won't appear in advertisements. I won't charge for rescues or accept payment for protection. I'm here to save lives, nothing more." He answered questions for 23 minutes before flying away to stop a building fire in Queens. Vought's stock dropped 11% before lunch. The first lawsuit was filed by dinner. Media coverage fractured along predictable lines. Conservative outlets labeled him an illegal immigrant threatening American values. Liberal networks debated whether his refusal to commercialize heroism represented progress or naivety. Social media devolved into chaos. Number real hero, trending alongside number alien threat, neither side interested in nuance. Stan Edgar convened an emergency board meeting. "He's not attacking us directly," Edgar observed, fingers steepled with calculated calm. "He's making us irrelevant. Every rescue he completes without monetization reminds the public what heroism looked like before we improved it. So we discredit him," a board member suggested. "Fabricate scandals, manufacture victims. We've done it before. With humans," Edgar replied. "Humans have secrets, weaknesses, history." He gestured at screens showing Superman lifting a collapsed highway overpass with one hand while directing traffic with the other. "This thing doesn't appear to have any of those." The meeting adjourned without solutions. 3 floors above, Homelander made his own decision. He found Superman over Manhattan, hovering above traffic, watching the city breathe. The confrontation that followed would be broadcast, analyzed, and memed for decades. "You're in my airspace," Homelander announced, smile gleaming for cameras that had materialized like insects drawn to violence. "I wasn't aware the sky had owners," Superman replied. "Everything has owners." Homelander drifted closer, eyes glowing faintly, not enough to attack, but enough to remind everyone what he could do. "The question is whether you're smart enough to recognize the hierarchy." Superman met his gaze without flinching. "I've met gods who thought they owned things. Most of them aren't around anymore." The air between them crackled with tension that made nearby helicopters retreat to safer distances. Homelander's smile remained frozen, but his eyes had lost all pretense of warmth. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said. "Neither do you," Superman replied. "That's probably new for you." For 37 seconds, neither moved. The world held its breath, waiting for violence that everyone assumed was inevitable. Homelander's heat vision flickered, building toward discharge. Superman didn't blink, and Homelander, for the first time in his existence, felt something he couldn't immediately process. Not anger, he understood anger. Not challenges were entertainment. This was something else. Recognition.
Superman went public on a Tuesday. No press releases, no costume reveals, no carefully orchestrated media campaigns. He simply landed in Central Park during peak hours, stood where cameras could see him clearly, and spoke. "My name is Superman. I'm not from this world, but I intend to help it. I won't sign contracts with corporations. I won't appear in advertisements. I won't charge for rescues or accept payment for protection. I'm here to save lives, nothing more." He answered questions for 23 minutes before flying away to stop a building fire in Queens. Vought stock dropped 11% before lunch. The first lawsuit was filed by dinner. Media coverage fractured along predictable lines. Conservative outlets labeled him an illegal immigrant threatening American values. Liberal networks debated whether his refusal to commercialize heroism represented progress or naivety. Social media devolved into chaos. Hashtag real hero trending alongside hashtag alien threat, neither side interested in nuance. Stan Edgar convened an emergency board meeting. "He's not attacking us directly," Edgar observed, fingers steepled with calculated calm. "He's making us irrelevant. Every rescue he completes without monetization reminds the public what heroism looked like before we improved it. So we discredit him," a board member suggested. "Fabricate scandals. Manufacture victims. We've done it before." "With humans," Edgar replied. "Humans have secrets, weaknesses, history." He gestured at screens showing Superman lifting a collapsed highway overpass with one hand while directing traffic with the other. "This thing doesn't appear to have any of those." The meeting adjourned without solutions. 3 floors above, Homelander made his own decision. He found Superman over Manhattan, hovering above traffic, watching the city breathe. The confrontation that followed would be broadcast, analyzed, and memed for decades. "You're in my airspace," Homelander announced, smile gleaming for cameras that had materialized like insects drawn to violence. "I wasn't aware the sky had owners," Superman replied. "Everything has owners." Homelander drifted closer, eyes glowing faintly, not enough to attack, but enough to remind everyone what he could do. "The question is whether you're smart enough to recognize the hierarchy." Superman met his gaze without flinching. "I've met gods who thought they owned things. Most of them aren't around anymore." The air between them crackled with tension that made nearby helicopters retreat to safer distances. Homelander's smile remained frozen, but his eyes had lost all pretense of warmth. "You don't know what you're dealing with," he said. "Neither do you," Superman replied. "That's probably new for you." For 37 seconds, neither moved. The world held its breath, waiting for violence that everyone assumed was inevitable. Homelander's heat vision flickered, building toward discharge. Superman didn't blink, and Homelander, for the first time in his existence, felt something he couldn't immediately process. Not anger, he understood anger. Not challenge, challenges were entertainment. This was something else. Recognition. The stranger wasn't afraid, because he had no reason to be afraid. He looked at Homelander the way Homelander looked at everyone else, as something smaller, less significant, manageable. The realization hit harder than any physical blow ever had. Homelander retreated without attacking, smile never wavering, and the world watched a god flinch. Underground, in a bar that served drinks strong enough to dissolve regrets, Billy Butcher watched the same footage with growing interest. "Well, well," he muttered, lifting a glass that had seen better decades. "Looks like someone finally grew bollocks big enough to match the cape." Huey glanced up from a laptop filled with Vought surveillance data. "You think he's for real?" "I think he's a problem," Butcher replied. "Just haven't figured out whose problem yet." Mother's Milk leaned against the bar, arms crossed, expression skeptical. Another soup showing up to play savior. How's that different from what we've been fighting? It's different because Homelander looked like he was about to shit himself, Frenchie observed, rewinding the footage. I've never seen that expression on his face. Whatever this Superman is, he's not like the others. Kimiko signed something rapid and forceful. Frenchie nodded. She says we should watch, learn, then decide. Butcher drained his glass and reached for the bottle. We'll do more than watch. We'll prepare. Prepare for what? Huey asked. Butcher's smile carried zero warmth. For the moment he proves he's just like all the rest. Because they always do, mate. They always bloody do. Batman made first contact with the boys on a Thursday. He didn't introduce himself. He left information, names, dates, account numbers, bodies. Everything they needed to confirm he knew their secrets and could destroy them whenever convenient. The message was clear. I'm not your enemy, but I could be. The meeting happened in an abandoned subway station that Butcher thought was secure. Batman had been inside for 3 hours before they arrived. You hate Vought, Batman said, emerging from shadows that seemed reluctant to release him. I want to dismantle them. We have aligned interests. Butcher's hand moved toward his weapon. And why should we trust a bloke who dresses like a Halloween decoration? You shouldn't. Batman stepped forward, allowing dim light to reveal armored contours and eyes that reflected no emotion. Trust is earned through results. I'm offering results. He placed a drive on a nearby crate. Compound V distribution networks. Covered up casualties. Vaught's contingency plans for neutralizing every enhanced individual, including their own. The truth about how Homelander was made and what happens when his handlers lose control. Huey reached for the drive. Butcher grabbed his wrist. What's your angle? Butcher demanded. Nobody gives away this kind of intel for free. I want what you want, Batman replied. Accountability. The difference is I'm better equipped to achieve it. Examined the drive without touching it. And the flying guy in the cape? He with you. He's his own category. Batman's voice carried something that might have been respect. Superman won't be controlled or predicted, but he won't become another Homelander either. You sound pretty sure about that, Butcher said. I've known him a long time, across multiple worlds. Batman turned toward the exit. The information is genuine. Use it or don't. But understand, Vought falls either way. The only question is how many innocent people die before that happens. He vanished before Butcher could respond. Frenchie whistled low. I think I'm in love. Kimiko punched his shoulder. The Truth went live on a Friday. Batman released everything simultaneously, every network, every platform, every device capable of displaying information. Compound V origins. Corporate murder ledgers. Hero casualty projections calculated like quarterly earnings. Decades of lies condensed into files that no lawyer could suppress fast enough. Vought stock didn't drop. It collapsed. Street protests erupted within hours. Statues of heroes were torn down by crowds who had worshipped them days earlier. Former fans burned merchandise. Parents demanded to know if their children had been experimented on. The rage wasn't partisan, it was universal. Everyone had been lied to. Everyone was furious. Homelander responded the only way he understood: intimidation. He appeared on live television uninvited, hovering behind terrified anchors, smiling while his eyes flickered with barely contained violence. These leaks are lies, he announced, fabricated by enemies of America who fear our strength. I am your protector. I have always been your protector, and anyone who threatens that relationship will be dealt with accordingly. The anchor's hands shook visibly. 3 states away, Superman was carrying an overturned school bus to safety, children cheering as he set it gently on stable ground. He didn't watch Homelander's broadcast. He didn't need to. The contrast was already defining itself. Vaught's remaining heroes fractured under pressure. A-Train overdosed twice in the same week, heart finally failing under chemical loads that had been killing him for years. He survived barely, and disappeared into a rehabilitation facility that wouldn't appear on any official records. The Deep retreated to his quarters, refusing contact, surrounded by fish tanks and the delusion that he remained relevant. His crisis of faith had begun years ago. Now it was simply visible. Queen Maeve stopped pretending. She gave interviews confirming Vaught's corruption, describing rescues that had been staged, victims who had been paid to lie, heroes who had been threatened into silence. Her testimony became central to investigations that would take years to complete. Stormfront chose violence. She gathered the remaining Vought loyalists, second-tier heroes desperate for relevance, security personnel with too much training and too little conscience, true believers who thought Compound V represented evolution rather than exploitation. Her targets were calculated. Immigrant communities, minority neighborhoods, facilities that served populations she considered unworthy. Each attack was designed to provoke Superman into response. Superman responded by saving everyone she tried to kill. No speeches, no confrontations. He simply appeared wherever she struck, evacuated civilians, neutralized threats, and left before cameras could capture more than blurred impressions. Every attempt to draw him into battle failed. Every massacre she planned became a rescue mission. Her frustration peaked during an assault on a refugee processing center. Superman had already evacuated 340 people when Stormfront arrived. Lightning crackling around fists clenched tight enough to whiten knuckles. "Fight ME," she screamed, power arcing toward him in patterns designed to destroy cities. "Stop hiding behind these worthless." Batman's contingency activated. The EMP was specifically calibrated for her bioelectric signature. It didn't disable her powers, it made them unstable. Feedback loops turning her own lightning inward. She collapsed mid-sentence, convulsing, power that had killed thousands now consuming itself. Superman caught her before she hit the ground. "She'll live," Batman said, emerging from a vantage point she had never detected. Whether she deserves to is someone else's decision. Stormfront's arrest became international news. Her history, not just her Vought crimes, but her origins, her ideology, her century of hatred, was exposed in documentation that Batman had prepared years in advance. She wasn't just a corrupt hero. She was a monster who had hidden behind corporate branding. The revelation changed everything. Public opinion didn't just turn against Vought. It turned against the concept of unaccountable power. Protesters demanded oversight. Governments proposed regulations. For the first time in decades, people asked questions that had been professionally discouraged. Who watches the Watchmen? And why did we ever stop asking? Homelander's breakdown happened in stages. The first stage was denial, maintaining the smile, making public appearances, insisting that everything remained under control while his handlers fled and his allies vanished. He still had power. He still had fans. He still had the capability to level cities. The second stage was rage, random outbursts that Vaught's PR department could no longer contain. A journalist who asked uncomfortable questions was found burned beyond recognition. A protester who threw eggs at his statue disappeared entirely. The pattern was obvious to everyone except the people too afraid to acknowledge it. The third stage was what Batman had prepared for. Homelander attacked Superman over New York City at 3:47 p.m. on a Wednesday, abandoning all pretense of heroism for pure, concentrated fury. Heat vision carved through buildings. Shockwaves shattered windows across Manhattan. The battle moved faster than civilian eyes could track. Superman didn't fight back, not initially. He absorbed blows that would have destroyed lesser beings, redirecting energy away from populated areas, prioritizing evacuation over engagement. "Fight me," Homelander screamed, blood vessels visible against eyes that blazed with power and madness. "Stop pretending you're better than me." "I'm not better than anyone," Superman replied, catching a fist that had killed dozens. "I just try harder to be good." That answer broke something in Homelander that had been cracking for years. He unleashed everything, not strategically, not tactically, but with the abandoned fury of a child who had never learned to process rejection. Buildings collapsed. Streets cratered. The National Guard mobilized and immediately realized they had no relevant capabilities. Superman endured, and when Homelander finally exhausted himself, when the rage had burned through reserves that Compound V couldn't replenish fast enough, Superman struck. Once, the impact was heard across 5 boroughs. Homelander's trajectory carved a trench through Central Park before terminating against bedrock that cracked from a force. He lay in the crater, breathing but broken, staring at a sky that had always belonged to him until today. Superman descended slowly, cape settling like a judgment. "You could have been good," he said quietly. "Someone should have taught you how." For the first time in his existence, Homelander felt something he couldn't name. Later, Batman would identify it as shame. The world watched Homelander's defeat in real time. The myth of invincibility shattered on live television. People who had worshipped him for decades saw their god bleed, saw him broken, saw him carried away by authorities who had been too terrified to challenge him before today. The age of manufactured heroes ended in a crater. What came after was considerably more power vacuums attract predators. With Vought collapsed and the 7 dismantled, smaller threats multiplied. Compound V had leaked into black markets worldwide. Freelance enhanced individuals tested boundaries. Criminal organizations recruited anyone with abilities and flexible morality. Governments raced to develop countermeasures that often proved worse than the problems they addressed. Superman couldn't be everywhere. He tried anyway. Days blurred into weeks of constant crisis response. Earthquakes in Japan, conflicts in Eastern Europe, domestic terrorism across the Americas. Every rescue was analyzed, criticized, commodified. Some demanded he do more. Others demanded he leave entirely. The discourse never stopped, never resolved, never reached conclusions that satisfied anyone. Batman worked in shadows that deepened with each passing day. He dismantled networks, intercepted shipments, assassinated projects before they could mature into threats. His methods were effective and morally complex, exactly as he intended. The boys found themselves at a crossroads. Huey wanted to help, actually help, not just destroy. He coordinated with journalists, supported whistleblowers, tried to ensure that accountability extended beyond symbolic gestures. His optimism had been tested, but not broken. Mother's Milk focused on communities, neighborhoods that had been exploited by Vought for generations, families whose children had been experimented on without consent. Healing required more than defeating villains. It required building something better. Frenchie and Kimiko operated, as they always had, surgically removing threats that larger systems couldn't address. Some targets were obvious. Others required research. All of them had victims who deserved justice. Butcher remained the wild card. He watched Superman with suspicion that bordered on obsession, cataloging every decision, every hesitation, every moment that might indicate the inevitable corruption that Butcher believed all power carried. "He's not like the others," Huey insisted during one of their regular arguments. "He's actually trying to be good." "So was Homelander," Butcher replied. "In the beginning, before he learned what power really means." "You don't know that." "I know God, mate." Butcher's voice carried decades of pain. "I know what happens when someone can do whatever they want without consequences. It always ends the same way. The only question is how many bodies pile up first." Batman understood Butcher's perspective, even shared elements of it. He had prepared contingencies for Superman since their first encounter across realities. He had kryptonite samples secured in locations no one would ever find. He had plans for scenarios he hoped would never materialize. But he also understood something Butcher didn't. Superman's strength wasn't just physical. It was moral. The final crisis came from predictable sources, a coalition of surviving Vought assets, military contractors who had invested too heavily in enhanced programs, ideologues who believed Compound V represented humanity's next evolutionary step. They called themselves the New Order, and they planned to succeed where Vought had failed. Their leader was a woman named Catalyst, enhanced, brilliant, and completely convinced that restraint was weakness. She had studied Superman's patterns, identified his hesitations, and designed attacks specifically to exploit his reluctance to kill. The confrontation lasted 3 days. Not because Superman couldn't defeat her. He could have ended the threat in minutes if victory was his only consideration. But Catalyst had positioned her forces among civilian populations, rigged infrastructure to collapse if her demands weren't met, created scenarios where every intervention caused collateral damage. She wanted to prove that Superman's restraint made him ineffective. She wanted to force him to become what she believed he really was, a god who would eventually stop pretending to be anything else. Batman coordinated the boys, dismantling Catalyst's support networks, while Superman kept her focused on the primary confrontation. Huey evacuated civilians. Secured critical infrastructure. Frenchie and Kimiko eliminated threats that couldn't be negotiated with. And Butcher watched, waiting for the moment Superman would cross the line. That moment never came. Superman contained Catalyst through precision and patience, intercepting attacks, protecting innocents, refusing to escalate beyond what protection required. When her forces collapsed and her options vanished, he offered her something no one expected: mercy. "You could have been good," he said, echoing words he had spoken to Homelander. "Someone still could be, if you choose differently." Catalyst laughed bitterly. "You can't change what I am." "I can't," Superman agreed. "Only you can do that." He delivered her to authorities who would ensure accountability, then flew away before anyone could turn the arrest into content. Butcher found Superman that night, standing on a rooftop overlooking a city that was learning how to heal. "You could have killed her," Butcher said. "Killed all of them. Ended the threat permanently." "I could have," Superman agreed. "But then I would become the threat that needed ending. And if the next one doesn't stop, if restraint isn't enough..." Superman turned to face him, and Butcher saw something he hadn't expected: exhaustion, doubt, the weight of choices that never got easier. "Then I'll do what I have to do, but only when every other option is gone, not before." Butcher was silent for a long moment. "I had contingencies," he admitted. "Plans to take you down if you went bad." "I know," Superman replied. "Batman told me. And I think you should keep them." Superman's voice carried no resentment. "Accountability means accepting that others can check your power. That's not a threat, it's a promise." Butcher had no response for that. 6 months later, the world had changed, imperfectly, incompletely, but genuinely. Vought no longer existed. Its assets had been seized, its executives prosecuted, its victims compensated through settlements that would take decades to distribute. The company that had defined heroism for generations was now a cautionary tale taught in ethics courses. Enhanced individuals still existed. Compound V couldn't be uninvented, but regulations had evolved. Oversight committees included civilian representation. Accountability mechanisms had teeth. The system remained flawed, but it was no longer purely theatrical. The boys continued their work, though the nature of that work had shifted. Huey ran a foundation supporting Compound V survivors. led community reconstruction efforts in neighborhoods that Vought had exploited. Frenchie and Kimiko operated as independent contractors, handling situations that official channels couldn't address. Butcher remained Butcher, paranoid, vigilant, preparing for threats that might never materialize. But something had changed in him too. He no longer assumed betrayal was inevitable. He watched, waited, and allowed himself to consider that some people might actually be what they claimed. Batman returned to shadows that required his attention, other worlds with other problems. Before leaving, he secured copies of all his contingency plans with individuals he trusted to use them appropriately, not to destroy Superman, but to ensure that power remained answerable to something beyond itself. And Superman? He continued doing what he had always done, saving people, one crisis at a time, never seeking credit, never demanding worship, never pretending that power made him better than anyone. He knew the work would never end. Threats would evolve. Mistakes would be made. The world would always contain people who believed strength entitled them to dominion. But it would also contain people who chose differently. People who understood that heroism wasn't about power. It was about how you used it. People who knew that the measure of strength wasn't what you could destroy, but what you could protect. As Superman flew above a city that was learning to trust again, he allowed himself something he rarely indulged: hope. Not the naive belief that everything would be fine. He had seen too many worlds burn for that, but the earned conviction that effort mattered. That choices compounded. That one person making one good decision could inspire others to do the same. The age of manufactured heroes had ended. The age of accountability had begun. And somewhere in the distance, in a future that remained unwritten, better possibilities were waiting to be born. The end.